Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about On the Shoulders of Titans by Andrew Rowe, the second book in the Arcane Ascension series. So, as usual, we're going to talk non-spoilery thoughts and opinions up front and then jump over to spoilers where we can talk in more detail. So, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, On the Shoulders of Titans is the second book in the Arcane Ascension series, and it picks up directly where the first book leaves off. So, mild spoilers for the ending of Arcane Ascension's first book, Sufficiently Advanced Magic. So, after the events of the finale of Arcane Ascension, and because Sarah drank that attunement water that Corrin saved from his judgment, and she like got that insane power boost, but it left her with such scarring and stuff that she's left with zero mana, no ability to use her magic at all, and she has no voice at all. So Corrin's priority right now is to try to find a way to heal her, try to find some sort of help for her. So in addition to that, his judgment mark that he got was turned into a new attunement. So now he has to understand what that attunement does and how it works and whether or not it'll be an asset or a liability. So this series is quite different than I really originally thought it was going to be. I did a little bit of research to see how it all plays into itself or to see how long the series is. The series is a little similar to the Cosmere in a way. There's multiple different series that all take place on this planet, and it's all different, groups of people dealing with different situations, but it's all surrounding dealing with these gods and these towers and this type of magic system. So there's the Arcane Ascension series, which follows Corrin Cadence during his time at Lorien Academy or Lorien Heights, the magic school, basically, and there's another one that's basically short stories that seems to take place in between the books because there's a book in between the first and the second one. I think in between the first no in between in between the second and the third one called Six Sacred Swords. So there's three books in that series, and there's three books in this series, and there's three books in the Forging Divinity series, and all of those takes place in the same world, and all of the stuff kind of has something to do with each other. So far as my understanding, the Corrin stuff is almost a side plot. So it's really interesting the way it's done because this entire second book really almost nothing happens, I guess I could say, because it's really just Corrin learning more about his powers, trying to help his sister, and just like hanging out, learning from Karis, Celerian, and learning from Derek, and just basically living. And like actually we're picking back up with school because all the events in the first book we kind of didn't get much of his school stuff, so almost the entire book is school stuff, which is so interesting and so different. It's like I on one hand I really like it because it's pure world building, it's pure magic lore teaching and talking and all that kind of stuff. So it's just really the stuff that people like me, like real huge world building people and like magic system lovers, like it's the kind of stuff that we really like. But to have an entire book it's really different and interesting. So it's not like that's all that happens in the story. There's other things that happen because the situation really is Corrin is kind of a pawn in all these other people's schemes. So he basically has no choice when stuff's not happening to him. He just, goes about his regular life and, is with his friends and his sister and stuff like that. And only real big stuff happens when, they come at him. So it kind of makes sense in the trajectory of the way his life is going that nothing's really going on. So just go back to school and keep trying to get more powerful and just try to prepare yourself for all the crap that you know is coming. So that's really the story. And the majority of the stories we're trying to save Sarah, and then some more stuff kind of comes up, and it kind of leads you back into the mystery that the first one set up, and we kind of learn a little bit more. We learn a little bit of information about some of the mysteries left hanging in that first one, but we don't really solve a lot of stuff. There wasn't like a big, huge thing that happens, like big battle or anything like that. It's just it's really interesting, and I can't really say if it's good or bad. I know some people won't be into it at all because there's like it's like I said, it's so much just schooling and teaching and learning and just experimentation with magic and stuff. There's almost no greater plot. It's just really people hanging out. And I think it's exemplified by what happens towards the end of the book. And I don't think this is a spoiler, but what happens at the very, very end of the book is just these friends telling stories to each other. So it's really interesting. It's so different than anything I've ever read before. And I think this is also the first time in fantasy I've come across a non binary character that wasn't also like a shapeshifter or something. So there's a character in here who's non binary, and they're really interesting. They're a fun addition to the cast, and like the way their magic and stuff, the way they use their magic skill and stuff. It's always more interesting to see characters who are older, more skilled with their magic and stuff, and see the potential of these characters, because we're just meeting them at their novice stage and stuff. So to see the more powerful older people is a lot of fun. And this healer person is really interesting because they know that their magic is insanely sought after, and it builds a type of arrogance, and they kind of lean into it. So it's actually a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to read about this person. So despite the fact that the story is very much just education and experimentation with magic and just kind of character interaction, a bit of character development, and some character fleshing out, really. I think it's a really interesting entry. If it was an anime, you'd almost call this filler episode type information, because it's really just building the story. And to me, it's very different that a writer would decide to like have an entire book dedicated to this rather than try to force it into the first book, which I think gives them a lot of credit, because it didn't, if you would have forced it into that first book, it would have destroyed the cohesion that that first book had. And by putting it off as a second, it's weird too, because this book is longer than the first book, and it feels like something that could have been an in-between book, and then there is an in-between book later. So it's just the entire experience of it is so different, and I'm really captivated by it. And the story itself is interesting. All the mysteries and stuff that's set up in the first one and continues throughout this one is done really well. So I definitely do recommend it. But if you're not a person that's really into like world building and like lore exploration and stuff like that, you will get bored with this one especially. So there's your fair warning there. So let's go ahead and jump over to the spoiler section so I can talk in a little bit more detail. So spoiler warning for On the Shoulders of Titans by Andrew Rowe. So the non-binary character I was talking about is Sheridan Theus, who is totally connected to a whole bunch of stuff, like people that Derek knows, and like all these powerful people that like have these interesting, insane magical artifacts. In order to be able to even get the help of Sheridan, they had to come up with like a trade. Sheridan wants like forbidden knowledge or interesting like magic weapons, or some kind of trinket or something, make it worth their while, like basically tempt me, make this healing effort I'm about to put in worth my while, kind of thing. And I thought that entire aspect of it was cool, because it was basically an excuse for us to go through the Jaden box that we found in the first book. And because Karis knows like the purge function really, and it just spits out all these items. So it really just gives us an excuse to go through all these different type of magic items and what type they can be and what they can do, and like how we can explore about that. So we find out about like a sentient dagger, and it's like they're like, oh, is that one dagger from this old myth story, story or whatever, the great story of so and so or whatever. And they're like, yeah, it probably was that dagger because it teleported itself away and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's totally different. And, like they get more into like weapon building and stuff, like how Corrin can create these epic magic weapons because he's an enchanter. And I love the fact that we're going more into the idea that he thought that was a weak attunement, like just a lazy coward's attunement because of his dad's perception and stuff, when in reality we're realizing he's like the most powerful one, like because he has the most versatility and can do all kinds of stuff. And even so far, just in this book, we've seen him mimic so many things that other attunements can do. Like he can do stuff that like shapers can do. He can move mana around and create like a mana blade and stuff, but like with tweaks and stuff. And he can use like different spells using like the type of mana he has access to that has similar effects to like stuff Guardians can do, because they have like basically the full super strength and speed kind of situation with their magic. He can almost mimic that kind of stuff. So it's like it's a great versatile type of magic, and I'm really happy that they're exploring it more, because I don't know much about it because it's very much RPG type stuff. It's, mana rules, and it's almost Magic the Gathering in a little bit of ways and stuff. Like, so I'm a little ignorant to a lot of it, so I really do appreciate this exploration of it and all this teaching that this book does. And I really like the lore and stuff that's explored because Patrick, one of the main characters, he's this big nerd for monsters and lore and weapons and stuff. So he just sprinkles in all this stuff about these epic magic swords and these old ancient quests and all this kind of stuff. And so we end up talking about the sword called Dawnbringer, and it's a sort of legend and all this stuff. And because Sarah got Visage's sword at the end of the first one, she got an awesome magic sword, and Corin got an awesome magic sword. Patrick's sitting there, he kind of jealous because he's the most obsessed with this stuff, and he doesn't have one. So, I feel a little bad for him too. So it was awesome that they decided to, because also Corn wanted to experiment with the magic of Karis because his magic is different because he's from another country and stuff, like completely different magic. So they wanted to combine their magic and see what they could do with it. And in order, like, the opportunity they had to mix their magic and play around with it was to build a sword for Patrick. And I thought it was really awesome. So they made a Dawnbringer substitute. And Dawnbringer is basically a sword that wields the power of the sun, more or less. And through the use of Karis's powers and Corin's powers, they're able to basically make a Dawnbringer replica. And it's really interesting. So even while doing that, Karis is like starting to tell them the story. Or actually, no. Like they're like telling each other stories and just catching up on their lives and stuff. The book basically ends with Karis telling them the story of Dawnbringer, which is basically the first book in the Six Sacred Swords series. Because as he's telling it, it kind of goes off and travels off, and then that book is that story, like told from Karis' perspective and all that stuff. So it's really interesting how this series kind of, it's like a in-depth exploration of the world. You're kind of just sitting in it, you're kind of sitting tight with it and stuff. I think it's really interesting, and I kind of dig it a lot. And I love, like I said before, I really love the magic exploration and the lore, like exploration and deepening and all that stuff. So I didn't even really miss all the mystery and all this stuff. Like, yes, we found out that Tristan's alive and that he's a whisperer and stuff, and he's probably not a good guy. And like we found out the mom is actually in on this, but there's like other stuff that we really don't know what's going on because Corin don't know, so we still don't know. So there's a lot of that stuff going on, but a lot of that stuff, or not a lot, but a good amount of it did get pushed forward. We got more clarity of the stuff we learned last time and a little bit of teases for stuff that'll come out next time and whatnot. But it's like I said, this book is so much just learning about magic, playing with the magic, experimenting with the magic, and learning more about these people and learning about the lore and the world and the way it all works. And I like it a lot. The more I even think about it, the more I start to like it even more, because the audacity of having a book that's purely your world building and exploration of your magic is just, it's so fun and cool, especially for a series that is like one of 3 series that is just purely fleshing out this world that you've created. So it makes me really interested to read the rest of the other ones because I've already read Six Sacred Swords. So I want to go into all the other ones like Forging Divinity and all that stuff. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel to catch that review when it comes out eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this review here. So have you all read Arcane Ascension #2 on the Shoulders of Titans? Or have you read any other fantasy story that really leans heavily into like RPG type logic? Let me know about that in the comments down below. So remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to you all next time. Peace.